House Speaker Scott Bedke, running for Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for joining us. We want to start with a real basic question. Why are you running for Lieutenant Governor?
Well, there are several reasons, but number one, I I want to restore the leadership at the in the Lieutenant Governor's office. I've had I've been privileged to work with 3 governors and have a good track record of working with the governors. As the Speaker of the House, there's not one thing that. Well, let's back up. I mean, we live in the best state in the nation to live, to work, and to raise a family, and we didn't fall to the top of this pile. Each one of those policies that we have here has come across my desk as the Speaker. I'm particularly proud of of our list of accomplishments. We can talk about that if you'd like, but I'm very possessive of our state and its success, and I want to see that continue. In real life, I'm a cattle rancher, and today, actually back home, I'm missing a branding. Now, I throw that out there because I use the concept of writing for the brand. After the election, I work for the state of Idaho. I don't work for myself. I work for Idaho and its betterment. And I think that I can extend the reach of the governor, and I think that I will be a valuable asset to the cabinet.
Great, thank you. What do you see as the role of Lieutenant Governor?
Well, much as I've just described, I need the Lieutenant Governor is an ambassador for the state. We raise way more stuff than we consume here, and so we always have to be looking outside of our boundaries to move our products, whether they be agricultural or from our manufacturing sector. That's what we do. I believe that I have expertise in several areas, including water and natural resource policy, tax policy, education policy, transportation policy. I've spent a lot of time in my legislative career in each of those areas, and I believe I will be a valuable asset to the team. I want to be out in our state's communities. I want to be listening. I want to be bringing back what I learn and hear there back to the broader audience inside the cabinet. I want to be very active as the Lieutenant Governor out in our state. And I'm at the time of my life where I can be away, like I said, but I'm a active cattle rancher at this point and farmer, and that not to diminish that, but these are agribusinesses. And I'm the 4th generation on the family ranch. The 5th generation is there. The 6th generation is there. And it's okay with them if I'm not looking over their shoulder every 2 seconds, frankly.
And the next 2 questions are somewhat related. And so I guess I'll start with, if you were elected Lieutenant Governor, and the governor, while you're Lieutenant Governor, the governor goes out of state for whatever reason, would you seek to issue executive orders or change executive orders while the governor is out of state?
No. In addition, I will never embarrass the state of Idaho as Lieutenant Governor. In order for a trusting working relationship to exist, we'll have our discussions, and if there are disagreements, I don't anticipate major ones, but we'll have those worked out. And it's not the Lieutenant Governor's job to do as has been done. I will. That's back to the concept of writing for the brand. I'll ride for the state of Idaho and its betterment, and not for self-aggrandizement.
And if the governor turns out to be someone other than Brad Little, someone that you might disagree with, or someone that you have had issues with in the past, would you still be able to serve that function as Lieutenant Governor? Same
story, same answer. Yeah, the election's over. It's about Idaho now. It's not about us.
Okay. So what would you, looking back as at your career as a legislator, what would you say are a couple, two or three of your biggest accomplishments?
Well, I'll give you two that come to mind first. I'm very proud that I was asked to mediate the longstanding water disputes in the Snake River Basin and the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. That was hard work. It was a rancorous issue, and we were able to put together an agreement that is holding, and I'm proud of that. We can go into a lot of detail if you choose there. I'm proud that we were able to amend our state's constitution with regard to rules review. And I was the statewide face of that. And I believe that Idaho is better off because the legislature does rules review after the executive branch, promulgates the rules. Those come back to the legislature, and that's been put into the Constitution. We did that by virtue of a court order before, and we're able to elevate that and put it in the Constitution. I think that's a net good thing. Frankly, I'm a little excited, even though there's still more work to do. Quiet, behind the scenes, and for years, I have thought that it is not right that we don't treat employees at the school districts the same way we treat all the rest of state employees with regard to health insurance. And we took a major step this year into making sure that all employees at every school district, whether it's large or small or rural or urban, that those employees can have the same healthcare benefits as all the rest of the other state employees. Now, it's a departure from the past, but I think that's going to, that's when we look back 10 years from now, we're going to think, that was a good idea, and I'm sure glad we did it.
And I want you to answer the next question really big picture. Looking far into the future, 20, 30, 50 years into the future, but what do you see are the top three challenges facing the state of Idaho that, and how would you address those challenges as Lieutenant Governor?
Well, Idaho has been discovered, as we've described. We're the fastest growing state in the union, both population-wise and economically. And so there's going to be some conflicts. There's going to be some growing pains. We are a state arguably in transition, certainly transitioning from what we've all known into something new. So I believe that how we manage growth is going to will be our watchword as we go forward. There's going to be increased competition for every lane mile. There's increased competition for every acre foot of water. There's increased competition for classroom seats. And those are the three areas that I think will largely define us as we go forward, is how we manage growth, but not just growth as a big, vague term, but growth specifically in our infrastructure, both roads, bridges, water infrastructure, but also in the softer infrastructure, if you will, in our schools and in our institutes of higher learning, whether they're trade schools or community colleges, universities, etc. I think that we're all very vested in our kids' success, and so we're going to have to make increased and targeted investments in our literacy and in our and getting our kids through our schools to be well prepared for the future.
And so we made great strides in transportation this session. Some would say that we haven't really been making great strides in terms of education. Where do you think we stand in terms of education funding and solutions to some of those education challenges as we grow as a state?
Well, I think we made some good, you say potato, I say potato. I think we did this year, particularly, like I've described, major investments back into our workforce in schools in the area of healthcare benefits, major investment back into literacy. And I think that is that will bear fruit. There are always going to be issues We are a large state, a diverse state. There's 125 different school districts, all of which, are a little bit different. And so there's always going to be some challenges there, making sure that our kids are always in good, safe schools, et cetera, and that there's a well-motivated, great teacher in every classroom. Those will always be challenges, but I think that we're up to it. And I think we've showed this year that by making the investments back in the system that we did, I think that we're well positioned.
Okay. And how about school vouchers? That proposal comes up perennially. Where do you stand on?
I understand the concept and of the money following the student. I think that money needs to follow, but when I think of that, think it needs to follow them from their homeroom out to the technical center, or as we blur the lines between 10th grade and the 14th grade, letting the money follow those kids in all of the various programs, I think is a good thing. Having the money follow the kids out to private or parochial schools, I guess I'm okay with that to a point, but these are tax dollars, and I want there to be accountability back to the taxpayers whenever we do that. If we're going to spend public money, our responsibility of transparency and results goes back to the taxpayers, and anything that circumvents that, I do not support.
Okay. And I want to stick with education for a couple more questions. Do you believe that that critical race theory is infiltrating our schools, both in K through 12 and through higher education? I want to differentiate critical race theory from the notion of left-leaning or diversity and equity programs. That's my second question, part of that question. But the first question I want to ask is whether you believe that critical race theory is infiltrating our public schools.
Well, infiltrating may be a little too much. Has it come up in schools? Yes, I believe that it has. Is it taken over our system? No, it has not. Since this issue came up, and with the passage of then House Bill 377, where we basically said, no public money can go to those efforts. I've been looking, I've been asking, I'm pretty well connected out in the school districts. I've been on the road a lot. I am hearing that it is not a major problem from my conversations with the leaders of the school districts.
Okay, and the issue or the question of critical race theories seem to have been conflated with these diversity and equity and inclusion programs, gender studies, particularly in higher education. Do you think that that's a problem that the legislature, the state government needs to address?
Well, when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think of the golden rule. And I believe that we should all get along, and that diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of our basic DNA as Idahoans. And I think when you start singling people out, then I believe that violates a basic tenet of the golden rule.
And so, is that something that the state government should address?
I think that the state government should be found protecting individual rights.
Okay. And so, should the state government defund or cut funding for universities based on diversity and equity and inclusion programs? If there's a gender studies program or a dean or somebody that adds up to $20 million in expenses,
I'm not comfortable with doing that. What I am comfortable about, in a larger sense, we should not be dictating what kids should think. Our institutions of learning should be all about creating critical thinkers and teaching kids how to analyze data, and not to draw conclusions. And I'm absolutely not comfortable with that. But I do want my kids, my grandkids, to be exposed to everything that has happened in society, good and bad. And I want our kids to learn how to critically analyze that. And that's where you'll always find me.
Okay. All right, I'll move on from that. And this really is not a setup question. This is really, a legitimate question that I want to hear your answer to. What actions or decisions has your predecessor or if you are elected lieutenant governor, the current lieutenant governor made that you would have done differently or disagreed with?
Well, I would have been on the same page with the governor. And as I said earlier, I don't think it's proper that when the governor leaves the state and that the lieutenant governor uses the sacred powers of the government to undo or redo or do as has been done. I don't think, I've been out on the road. I've been talking to Idahoans. Idahoans are not comfortable with when the governor leaves, the lieutenant governor trying to change and reverse the policies of the governor.
Okay. Any other issues or decisions or actions?
Well, I will balance the budget in the lieutenant governor's office at the end of each year. So there's that.
Okay. What key issues do you think separate you from your opponent?
Well, I am results oriented, and I have made my legislative career on getting things done, accomplishing stuff. I think that the main difference between us is that I get results, and and not just rhetoric. I've said before, if you want to see the good legislators down at the Capitol, you can do and how you can tell immediately who is and who isn't is in the month of March, because you'll see House members on the Senate side working the House bills and trying to get them through. You'll see senators on the House side working the House and trying to get their stuff through. Both sides will make occasional visits down to the governor's office and speaking with their staff, because this is a team sport. Not in a compromise kind of way or a rubber stamp kind of way, maybe it's better said, but every piece of legislation's got to have 36 votes, 18 votes, and 1 vote. And if you're not about getting your votes, then all you are is you're all about making a statement and not a difference. And I think the hallmark of my legislative career is that I was always found trying to make a difference.
And you would continue that as lieutenant governor?
Absolutely. There was no owner's manual when I inherited or won, I guess, the office of the speaker. And so with the office, we were able to accomplish a bunch of things, and we cut them out of whole cloth. We were able to, keep in mind, Scott, all the easy stuff has been done. Now we're down to the hard stuff. And as I described earlier, solving that decades-long water dispute was a big deal. And then from off of that success, they asked me to do the mediation in the Boise River system. And then off the success of that, they asked me to do the mediation in the Wood River system. And I've been able to do that. And there was not an owner's manual that they slipped into my hand as I went into the first meeting. We were just able to go out and meet with the parties, learn their issues. I bring some knowledge of their issues to the meetings, however. But we were able to create compromises and agreements between these arguing factions and get something that works. And I think that's what's lacking in all levels of government is the easy stuff's been done. Now we got to work out the hard stuff. And I think I'm uniquely I can do that. I have those abilities to put together hard deals.
Okay, so similarly, do you see this role of lieutenant governor as a unifier of the party? And they're, looking at the candidates and looking at the races shaping up for the state legislators. there's some familiar names are still going to be around next session, no matter what. Some these warring factions within the Idaho Republican Party. How would you, as Lieutenant Governor, be able to unify the party, or how would you address those warring factions within the party?
Well, good policy makes good politics. And I believe that there are things that unify all Idahoans. And I think that there are issues out there that transcend any of the differences. And as the speaker, I mean, I was never able to choose who the state of Idaho sent to the House of Representatives, yet we were able to, to get things done. And I believe that I still possess those qualities. And I am very possessive of our state and its success. And that's what you'll find me doing, is trying to put parties together, trying to find the areas where people's positions overlap. There's a bunch of things that we do as a state that are not partisan in nature. There's not a Republican way or a Democrat way to fix roads, for example, or maintain bridges, or fill the aquifer up with water. and the list goes on and on. And so back to, let's come up with good policy, and that will elevate everyone's political boats, if you will.
And so how would you assess your performance as Speaker of the House in terms of controlling those disparate members? You've got a couple of sessions ago, you had some 980 bills proposed, a record number of bills, and yet the same number of bills passed. Crazy bills that just were ludicrous. They got printed. How they got printed, I'm not sure. It seemed at times a little bit out of control. You've got bills that are coming to the floor that, quite frankly, embarrass Idaho, that probably don't address any problems that Idaho really has. We talked about water and transportation education. We didn't talk about transgender athletes and conversion therapy, but bills that just tended to be those political issues. And as a speaker, those were kind of under your watch. How would you assess your performance as a speaker, trying to balance all those legislators?
Well, I would think, they're baked into your question is some, I believe, let me explain a little bit. I mean, I was elected Speaker of arguably one of the most conservative legislative bodies in the United States 5 consecutive times. Why? Because they trusted me to wield the power of the Speaker's office, and I did not do that in a haphazard or biased way. And so what you saw at work, as you recite all of the things that are good or bad or ugly, what you see is a representative democracy in work. That's how it is. People bring their ideas. Many of those things didn't make it through the system, and that's good or bad based on your perspective. But when you get a speaker or someone that's in authority that uses that authority to thwart the system or to stifle voices, then I believe then I would, had I done that, I would have been short-lived as the speaker, not a five-time speaker. So anyway, all of these legislators come to the Capitol with good intentions, and they think they're working in good faith. And there is disagreement there, and there is friction between the House and the Senate, and you never want us to start rubber stamping each other anyway. But I believe that I was trusted enough to be reelected, like I said, 5 times, and it was because I didn't misuse the power that they have vested in the Speaker's office through rule.
And are you concerned about the possibility of the Idaho Senate taking a harder right turn and looking a little bit more like the House?
again, we're going to go through an election, and whoever the people of Idaho send to the House and the Senate, it will be that that will be that legislative district's first choice to send. And whoever, when they get to the Senate, I will, and as your lieutenant governor, I'll treat all comers with respect. I will know the system cold, and I'll be able to preside and understand the nuance differences between the House and the Senate early in the process. And I'll execute the office of lieutenant governor in an unbiased way as I possibly can.
Do you see the position of lieutenant governor as a stepping stone to other office?
Well, obviously, there are former lieutenant governors that have gone on to higher office, and we'll let the future take care of the future. I am running because I think Idaho needs an effective lieutenant governor this cycle.
What would you have done differently in Idaho's response to COVID to reduce the number of deaths and avert crisis standards of care?
Well, I'm not going to second guess what was done. I believe that in hindsight, the things that were done are justifiable for the most part. I've thought at times that I would have brought in the legislature in a more substantive role and let them own all these fun decisions that the governor had to make there. And because there were a whole bunch of critics and darn few architects. And I think that we came through the COVID crisis as a state, as well as any state in the United States did. And the proof is now in the pudding. People thought we were going to be in at least a slight recession, and we're anything but. Our economy is performing well. And so there's a luxury of being able to just criticize and not own the decisions that was had. And I would, like I say, I would have maybe included the legislature and let them own the same decisions that we've had to make, because I think most people, rational people exposed to the same information, usually arrive at the same types of decisions.
So I want to ask a couple questions about the balance of power. This is an interesting, unique situation where you are seeking to move from the legislative branch of government to the executive branch of government. Do you think that there is currently a proper balance between the executive branch and the legislative branch in Idaho?
I think on balance, yes. It's not, I think it was improper to have to go back to the maintenance of government type, to the Cold War era statutes in order to conduct an election during the pandemic. I mean, so we had all these statutes on the books for emergencies and extreme emergencies and all like that, but they've never been stress tested before. Now we've stress tested them. We were able to come up with solutions last session that after the initial few bills were introduced and they didn't go anywhere, then we were able to come up with others and sit down with the executive branch and sign many things into law that needed to be updated. Everyone that looked at them understood and knew the necessity of updating our statutes. Now, it's too bad that we had to wait for a crisis to do that. But I think that that's kind of our way at times. Human nature way is to put it off and put it off and put it off until you have to do something. And so when you have a collection of humans in the legislative branch, it's no surprise that that's what we did. I guess it's a good thing that we haven't stress tested it since 1960 or in the 60s, and now we did, and the next one will be different, and we'll be, maybe we'll be better prepared, and maybe we won't. We'll miss the mark completely.
And do you think that those issues have been corrected now? And specifically, I want to ask about the governor's decision to form a committee to spend federal relief dollars, and the governor's decision to change the election laws in March of 2020. It seems like both of those scenarios didn't get fixed and didn't get addressed legislatively. So do you feel that the legislature has indeed fixed those issues that were of the biggest importance during the pandemic?
Well, I think we've taken important steps in that direction. But is our work done? Probably not. But I think that, looking back, I think we're in a much better position than we would have been had we not.
So do you feel that the governor's decision to change the election laws was constitutional?
I believe that that's again my point here. If you have to rely on Cold War era statutes to conduct an election, then arguably your statutes are stale and they need to be updated now. And now they have been, and I think we're in a much better position. And again, and I believe that it is the legislature's responsibility to appropriate money, even though we've made provisions and through the what we call the non-cognizable process, to do that in the legislature's absence. Again, that would be one of the areas that I would have included the legislature and let them own those decisions as well.
Okay. I want to switch to taxes. Did you support I'll ask, did you support the income tax cut and the income tax rebate that were passed in the last session?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you think that the rebate could have been spent in a better way than issuing rebates?
Well, short answer, no. I think that we were able to make significant historic targeted investments after a historic targeted tax cut, both in infrastructure, hard infrastructure, roads, bridges, water infrastructure, and at the same time do an historic investment back into our school systems. We're able to move the teachers up on the career ladder. We're able to make the changes in the health benefits, insurance benefits that we described, as well as major investments back in literacy. Governor Little calls that the trifecta, and I agree with him. I think we hit all three of those bases pretty well. And yes, I supported each one of them.
And do you think the income tax rebate, the $350 million rebate, was more important than grocery tax relief? I
believe it was. Keep in mind that on grocery tax, as everyone's doing their taxes these days, here or the next little while, on our line 43 of the Idaho State income tax form is your refundable grocery tax credit. That's been around in Idaho since 1965. That gives relief from the sales tax on food to only Idahoans, and has done since 65. We freshened that up to keep up with inflation this year. And now the Spud family of 4 in Idaho can buy $8,000 worth of sales tax-free groceries a year. Now, if that doesn't wipe out all of the impacts of the sales tax on food, fine, but we already have, then that can be adjusted up. But we have gone, but our actions have created a system where benefits from Idaho tax policy only accrue to Idaho citizens, not out-of-staters and those that do not file for Idaho state income taxes.
But it really wasn't enough, was it? It was only a $20 increase, and it doesn't take effect until the 2024 tax return, where it's the Spud family really needs about $160 per person tax credit, and they need it now rather than 2 years from now. And so some people would say that it would have been better to do that rather than give a rebate, a $350 million rebate that primarily went to wealthier Idahoans.
No, the rebate goes to every Idahoan that files their income taxes. So you and I may disagree on that. The 120, is that enough? It's up 20% from where it was at 100. And if it's 160, then I would tell future legislatures to bring that up to the number so that the impacts of taxing food in Idaho have been removed to Idahoans. But again, the benefits from Idaho's state tax policy should only accrue to tax-paying Idahoans, not out-of-staters and not non-citizens. In addition, if we take, and I would urge the board to talk to those in the community that are retail grocery sellers, and the fact that we would take the sales tax off of food or not has zero to do with the way they price their groceries. There was this anticipation that everything would be dropped by that amount, yet that's not how they price their groceries at all. And anyway, that's a longer discussion, but I think that the policy that we've had in place since 1965, so that all benefits of the tax credit accrue only to Idahoans that pay income tax, I think is a good defensible policy. Could it be more? Always. Is the timeliness right? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that it's a defensible policy so that, again, the benefits only accrue to Idahoans.
Okay. November is going to be an interesting election for a number of reasons. One of them is there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would allow the legislature to call itself back into session under certain conditions. If you are elected lieutenant governor, would you still support that constitutional amendment?
Yes, I would. I think they're under certain conditions, and I think the bar is set fairly high in that question that'll be before our citizens. I think there's safety in how high the bar is set, and I think that sometimes there are circumstances when it's altogether fitting and proper that the legislature should be able to call itself back into session. Remember, there's not a crater out there where all the other states that are able to do this, is. We were one of the fewer states that cannot, and I think in a representative democracy that the process of checks and balances is something that should happen all year round, not just during the legislature's in session.
Do you believe we need to pass stronger election laws in Idaho?
Well, Idaho has very strong election laws and very secure elections. Now, as technology changes, I mean, we always got to be on top of that. I mean, our process works when we are absolutely certain that my vote counts, and we have a process where you're certain that your vote counts and everybody's vote counts. And then we have certainty, even though our candidate may win or may lose, but we have confidence in our election system. And I think that that's where our process, our system of a representative republic starts at the election day, and we can't be too careful about making and keeping it secure.
Your opponent has a 96% rating from the American Conservative Union, while you have a 59% rating. Club for Growth ranked Giddings' voting record as 100% and you at 41%. Can you explain that difference, and how important is that?
Well, I believe that I've well represented the citizens of District 27. And I think they've been very comfortable with my representation, and I have made it a priority of mine to not let any third-party interest, regardless of the the name or the title or what they propose to come in between me and my constituents. I think they expect me, they trusted me enough to elect me, and they trust me enough to keep the relationship between me and them sacred and not bring other people in, and to give your vote consistently to any third party, regardless, I don't think is what your constituents expect.
Okay. Does that go for the Idaho Freedom Foundation as well?
Yes, it does.
Do you think that there's too much beholdenness to the Idaho Freedom Foundation?
Well, let's examine them. This is a very successful business model, and their business model is designed to get money out of donor pockets and into theirs. And so what they sell on the way, and to facilitate that process is it's up to them. And again, I assumed all legislators came to the legislature in good faith, and that they made their votes in good faith. And one of the first things I learned as a brand new legislator was to never question any of my colleagues' votes. And I don't want to start doing that now, but nor will I. I assume good faith, but I also think that the good faith starts with your election, and the trust is between the elected official and the constituents, and you should never violate that trust.
Are there other questions from board members to follow up?
Sure. Speaker, as you know, the role of lieutenant governor by the Constitution is relatively limited. You serve as governor when the governor's out. You are head of the Senate. So a lot of past lieutenant governors have sort of made projects out of the office. Governor Little put a particular focus on energy policy, things like that. Do you have any particular area that you would like to devote your interests to, and your kind of your bully pulpit when the legislature's not in session?
Well, that will be coordinated with the governor. I do bring a pretty good resume to the office. I have experience in each of the following areas: natural resources with an emphasis in water. I was a long time member on JFAC. I've served on the Revenue and Taxation Committee for a long time. Been served on the Transportation Committee my whole time. I've recently been appointed to the Estro Perpetua working group, which is tasked with the new, pushing back on all of the new types of drugs, fentanyl and all of its derivatives. And I believe that is that's a subject that we can't talk enough about, and that the communities need to be very aware of that and the danger that proposes. There's no such thing as recreational use anymore. This stuff is poison, and people are dying over it. And I think that, and we're not going to be able to incarcerate our way out of this one. This is going to take some systemic change and systemic mindset change. And I've been, so I will continue to work in that area. I will work wherever the need is, and feel like I have a broad and varied resume, and I think I can add value wherever I end up.
One little follow-up on that. Governor Little served as co-chairman of the Line Commission. He didn't ask Lieutenant Governor McGinn to keep that going. Is that a role you have an interest in renewing, working with the Line Commission?
Well, certainly, and to the extent, one of Idaho's best public assets is the Idaho National Laboratory, and how it interfaces with the state, not only at the state government level, but also being an advocate for the INL in the federal landscape as well. I think that's very important to the state, and it's one of our main economic drivers, particularly in the eastern part of the state, and would look forward in working there as well.
Any other follow-up questions from any of the board members? And Speaker Bedke, anything else you wanted to add that you think we left out?
Well, again, I think that we're pretty lucky to live in the state that we do. I believe that it's one of the best states to live in, to work in, and to raise a family in. We have been successful through the years of putting Idaho values, if you will. And I know that that's an intangible term, but I think we all know them when we see them, of limited government, living within the taxpayer's means, always protecting the Second Amendment rights, always protecting the lives of the unborn, always empowering parents in curriculum and educational choices, tax policy, not a big regulatory footprint, et cetera. Those are all Idaho values, and we've been very successful in putting those into policy through the years. And I don't want all of this new growth to change who we are, frankly. I mean, I can think of nothing worse than to waking up 10 years from now and wondering where our Idaho went. And I think that we've got something special here. It's worth our best efforts to try to protect, and that's what I want to do as your next lieutenant governor.
And what's your biggest fear? What's your biggest fear of those changes? What do you think would be the biggest negative?
Well, I would hate to see any erosion of our quality of life here. We have a great business climate, and we're able to attract and keep business here. I would hate to see more traffic gridlock in the Treasure Valley than we already have. I would hate to see a lessening of our water quality and all of the things that make Idaho special. Our ability to recreate out in the outdoors and in all its varieties, I think makes Idaho special. I think for the most part, the friendliness of everyone. We interact. People tend to get along here, and that's because we have big things that unite us here in the state of Idaho. And we have a big state here to love, and we do, and we recognize that in each other. I don't want to sound corny here at all, but it's a little different here than it is in other states. I don't have a lot of experience there in these other states, but it seems different to me, and I think it's worth protecting.